When I was a little girl, I loved Disney movies. I would sit in front of the TV for hours, marveling at all of the princesses and their happily ever afters. The one that I liked the most, though, and probably watched over 50 times, was The Little Mermaid. The red-headed mermaid immediately caught my attention, how she wanted to leave her life in the ocean behind for a guy she had never formally met. I thought it was romantic back then. And over the years, I came to realize that I especially enjoyed movies like these: Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, all movies with princesses who got these happily ever afters. A prince that would give them all, and that was the end of their story. I guess this was the beginning of my endless childhood romanticism. In the first grade, I liked a boy in my class, and on my birthday, I bought him a gift. My teacher actually scolded me because of this and told me the other kids felt excluded because they weren't getting one. In the third grade, I would sit beside the guy I liked in the carpet when the teacher read to us in the class, and I tried putting my hand over his as some sort of romantic gesture. He was really weirded out by it, of course. And in the fifth grade, a boy who sat beside me in class asked me to be his girlfriend with a Post-it note. And can you guess what I said? I might have only known him for a week, but I said yes with a smile and my two little braids on my shoulders. He broke up with me a week after. From Disney movies to princesses and 9-year-old boys, it seems as if I was always searching for a romantic endeavor. I desperately sought a happily ever after that I saw in every playground. Now we're in high school. All I see on my Netflix feed are horribly produced chick flicks that have the same guy playing the same role for the 50th time, and shows like Gossip Girl that have 30 new couples each season. But why? Why are we so obsessed with love? It may seem like something teenagers are thinking about every single day, but it goes beyond that, way beyond that. And then I realized, it goes all the way back to Disney movies, love songs, and all those happily ever afters we're exposed to. From books to movies to social media, love is presented as this ideal state. Our brains unconsciously equate being in a relationship to success and superior to being single. Yet, this isn't exclusive to the status quo, as love has been present since the beginning of humankind. Countless philosophers, psychologists, and scientists have searched for the origin of such a desirable thing. Yet, love is left to the interpretation of the individual, but is highly influenced by the societal concepts that have been created around these. That's when the question presented itself. What in our psychology dictates such a form of thinking at a societal level? And so I began my research. From article to article, I kept running into one constant theme: the popular, mainstream term known as daddy issues. As silly as it may seem, it led me down a rabbit hole, and I eventually found the origin of such term. Turns out this was not at all new. Matter of fact, this complex dates back to the 20th century. Sigmund Freud, most commonly known as the father of psychoanalysis, one of the most influential medics and psychologists of the 20th century, developed a plentiful array of psychological theories. In place, one that correlates to the complex origin of love and how humankind acts according to it. Shrouded within an already extensive theory, known as the psychosexual stages of development, Freud characterizes a particular phase of it, the Oedipus/Electra complex. Now, I bet many of you have heard of this theory in the first place, or at least have heard of the famous Greek tragedy it's named after. Freud explains that basically, when we're 3 to 6 years old, we fall in love, typically, with our progenitor of the opposite sex, and feel hatred or envy for the parent of the same sex. For men, this is titled the Oedipus complex, and for women, it is known as the Electra complex. When the child is young, he or she develops an infatuation for the parent of the opposite sex, thus perceiving them as their first love at an unconscious level. Yet, the child realizes that the parent already has a life partner, the progenitor of the same sex, thus the feelings of rivalry, and is left with this void that is never resolved. This causes us to have an unfulfillment, or at least that's what Freud says. This theory, however, is not a given fact, and has been dismantled and questioned by modern psychologists countless times. Yet, it is an insightful way to look at it, and many of his predecessors, psychologists within the modern field, have presented more plausible and recurrent theories that are able to tie to more than just love, but also face many of the questions humanity has, not just love. One of his many predecessors and former colleague, Carl Gustav Jung, expanded upon his theories in an unconventional way, able to tie this obsession to not only to love, but to the development of mankind and universal feelings. Although Jung's theory isn't mutually exclusive to love, it can be applied in such a scenario and is much more plausible in the world of contemporary psyche. Jung is able to recognize this idealism and superiority given to love when it simply isn't as society paints it. The societal phenomenon, the obsession with love, comes from an individual perspective that becomes collective, as we all experience it. This is what Jung likes to call part of a collective unconscious, a term he himself coined, considered part of Jungian psychology. It attempts to explain why so many ancient texts and civilizations, such as mythology and religious texts, share constant patterns and themes that are frequently displayed. He wondered why this happened, how all of these cultures from multiple time periods shared common structures, symbolism, and themes in their writing and artistic expression. He then realized that all of these stem from innate human nature. This is what it forms, the collective unconscious. The most common themes that we see throughout storytelling actually stem from these. Happiness, justice, love. These are all part of the collective unconscious. But what is the collective unconscious exactly? It's difficult to explain without getting wordy, but it is an innate place within our insentient mind that is common to everyone here. It is a collection of beliefs, knowledge, and imagery that is general to every single human. We may all have our differences, but we can all agree upon common themes displayed throughout storytelling, like the good versus evil morale or justice. This is what stems from the collective unconscious. And Jung is able to tie this back to love, as love is one of these frequently displayed things in the collective unconscious. Love is so prevalent in current society because of how in-depth it is within our innermost mind. The more deep something finds itself in our collective unconscious, the more we subconsciously express it through any forms at our reach. The human being, having this constant innermost paradox within them, finds for a way to express these, and this, often than not, concentrates on art, storytelling, or any other medium that we may explore. This obsession with love can be encompassed by Jung's theory, as he also realizes the physiological factors that go within it. Love is innate to humanity, and now it has fallen under the Western world's wing. It is heavily prioritized and glorified. It drives our meaning and desire, often seen as a motivation and a way to reach the ultimatum of life. It is often portrayed that love will make us reach the end goal or happier than what we are currently. Although this is true in many cases, it is not applicable for all. This theme within the collective unconscious exists due to our constant seeking for an expression of what has become in our collective unconscious. These individual factors that make us seek for love aren't particular to any sole human being, as we all experience it. I, however, don't doubt why it's sought so often. From the feel-good hormones released when you're in love, like oxytocin, quite literally nicknamed the love hormone, to enjoying a genuine bond and connection with someone, a principle of human interaction, love is a beautiful thing. Yet, the constant exposure to it can become overwhelming, especially if you're single. And it goes without saying, it's okay to be single. The constant glorification and exposure from society can often affect our mental health, as it hinders us from discovering the real reason we desire love. The constant exposure to love can often affect our mental health, All of the pressure coming from all angles can often hinder us from realizing the real reason we seek love. I wouldn't blame anyone for feeling this way. It's completely natural to desire it. The problem is when love becomes an obsession, not a complementary. When love becomes a way to fulfill happiness unconsciously because of external and internal factors, it can be harmful. It just isn't love. It's perfectly okay to be single, it goes without saying, and can be more beneficial than otherwise. It leads us to know what we like within a relationship and understand what we desire. So if there's anything I want you to take away from this, is that love is extremely romanticized nowadays. From movies like The Notebook to songs by Paul Anka, it forms part of our collective unconscious and identity as humankind. It makes us feel lonely to see it everywhere. When society tells you that the best thing that could ever happen to you is being in a relationship, you can't help but to feel alone. It is an ever-expanding, beautiful experience, but we can't help but realize it can affect our mental health to be overly exposed to it. Being single is an equally fulfilling and beautiful experience, and we shouldn't undermine that. We have all of our lives to love someone, so why not start by loving ourselves? Thank you.